Buenos Aires. At its height in the 1920s, it was a disgrace beyond measure for every Argentine Jew. Which of their detractors didn't enjoy in his morning paper a good picture of an Alphonse in handcuffs, a caftan member in a lineup? Who didn't feel his reviling justified at the sight of the famous Jewish pimps of Buenos Aires, accompanied by their pouty-lipped Jewish whores? But this was long over in 1950, when Kaddish found himself locked outside the gate. That terrible industry as a Jewish business was by then 20 years shut down. The buildings that belonged to the Society of the Benevolent Self were long sold off, the pimps' shul abandoned. There was only one holding that couldn't possibly fall into disuse. Disrepair, yes, and derelict too. But, like a riddle, what's the only thing man can build that is guaranteed perpetual use? The dead use a graveyard forever. That cemetery was also the only institution established by the pimps and whores of Buenos Aires that was built with a concession from the upstanding Jews. Hard-hearted as those Jews were when it came to the benevolent self, they couldn't turn away in death. The board of the fledgling United Jewish Congregations of Argentina was convened and an impasse reached. No Jew should have to be buried as a Gentile, God help them. But neither should the fine Jews of Buenos Aires have to lie among whores. They shared their quandary with Talmud Harry, who, as leader of the benevolent self, sat at the head of a board of his own. "You lie with them living," Harry said. "Why not cuddle up when they're dead?" Eventually it was agreed. A wall to match the one surrounding the graveyard would be built toward the back, and a second cemetery formed that was really part of the first. Technically, but not halakhically, which is how Jews solve every problem that comes their way. The existing wall was a modest 2 meters, a functional barrier meant to set off a sacred space. The establishment of a Jewish cemetery in a city obsessed with its dead had signaled a level of acceptance of which the United Congregations only dreamed. They'd wanted to show their ease in its design. But being accepted one day doesn't mean one will be welcomed the next. The Jews of Buenos Aires couldn't resist planning for dark times. So atop that modest wall they'd affixed another 2 meters of wrought iron fence, each bar with a fleur-de-lis on its end. All those points and barbs 4 meters up gave that wall an unwelcoming, unclimbable, pants-ripping feel. The United Congregations allowed themselves one hint at grandeur in the form of a columned entryway capped with a dome. Before any balance was achieved among the Jews, this was the one they'd struck with the outside world. 2 sets of board members stood watching the new wall go up. The westernized Liberator's Shul rabbi had declined to attend. It was the young Old Country rabbi who paced nervously, making sure certain standards were met and horrified to find himself presiding. When the mortar had dried, the governors of the United Congregations returned for the installation of the fence. They were surprised to find the pimps assembled on their side. It was a sight those upstanding Jews had hoped never to see again. A line of famed benevolent self toughs stood before them, including a still robust Hezi Two Blades, Coconut Burstein, and Chaim Moshe One-Eye Weiss. Towering over Talmud Harry was the very large, very legendary Shlomo the Pin. "The wall is plenty high enough," Talmud Harry said. "A fence is an insult that need not be made." The Jews of the United Congregations didn't think it was an insult. They thought it would match nicely with the fencing all around. A number of ugly threats were already implicit. There was nothing much Harry needed to add. He pointed at the wall and said only, "This is as separate as it gets." Their faces went long. They turned to the rabbi, but he couldn't support them. A solid 2-meter wall was a separation by any standard. It would suffice for mechitza or sukkah, or to pen a goring ox. While the finer points were being argued, Talmud Harry gave the nod. A jittery 2 blades began to reach, and Shlomo the Pin rolled the fingers of his right hand.